started there, Mike. All right, another morning, another quick and dirty morning with me, Wardo. Going to continue on to the kind of the path I've been down the last little bit. Do kind of the hinge and the deadlifts, some tips, tricks, ways to pull. Hoping to be pain free. Some variation in there. And yeah, hopefully learn a couple of things. I think I'm getting some good bear karma. It's been I missed my usual. I've got my little black rifle in the coffee cup with some MCT powder. Cheers, you guys. Also, I'm going to put an ad out for this, but Canis has a huge sale, Memorial Day sale. So I think that's coming up here quite quickly. So anyways, look out for that. Have a look at their socials to see the discounts and deals. Been using that stuff. It's been pretty sweet, man. It's good clothing, good technical gear. What I was saying, good bear karma. Man, I'm telling you, passed on quite a few on 3 now small bears, and I'm hoping I'm building some karma for not taking some real little ones, which is just the right thing to do. So maybe I'm not getting any karma at all, in my opinion. If you're gotta feed your family, then I would pull the trigger on all 3 of those. But I've got a freezer pretty full of meat, so just holding out a little bit for a bit of an older bear. Heading out again in a couple weeks with Yankee and another buddy. Pretty excited. Let's get into it. So basically, we've gone over the squat, we've gone over some kind of break, we went over bracing, we went over squat, we went over kind of wearing a belt, to wear a belt, to not wear a belt, that sort of thing. Now, you can catch those on previous podcasts. Now, the deadlift is something that gets blamed for hurting your back, and like really that's like the most ridiculous thing ever, because you can't blame you can't blame a lift for hurting your back. Like, it's you that did it. Like I blew my back apart with in a CrossFit workout. It was my 18th rep at 315 after a bunch of other stuff and some handstand push-ups and so on and so forth. And things were going quite well, and then I just kind of locked out a little funny and felt a crunch in my back and badly tore a ligament and some disc damage and stuff. So I don't blame the deadlift. I blame myself for trying to stick to this rep scheme I had in mind of chipping out these pretty fast threes, and the form was starting to go, the fatigue was there, and it happened. But I'm not looking at the deadlift like, oh man, I hate that lift because it hurt my back. It's just, a lot of people have fear over it though. I mean, I still have fear over a conventional deadlift. That's where your feet are inside. Your legs are inside your arms, kind of what we'd all think of as a deadlift. I mostly pull sumo and trap bar now. I probably want to pull some conventional. Again, I just really have to take my medicine on getting my body ready to do it, because it's just a little bit different. So, I mean, maybe that's our first point. So there's many different types of deadlifts to pull from. There's conventional, there's sumo, that's where your legs are outside your hands and you sit down more into almost more of a squat position. I've heard some people bash that, saying it's not quote unquote functional, which is the dumbest shit I've ever heard. Because tell me a time ever, if you were going to lift a table or a couch or a bed or anything heavy, a rock, like anything, tell me a time where you would rather your legs be inside that object or it further away from your body. You're gonna put your legs outside, have your hands in the middle, and then stand up. So there's gotta be a reason for that as well. So it's definitely the more functional lift. The other thing is that your torso is gonna be more upright. I do see people kind of butcher this quite often and have high hips pulling from a torso or pulling from a sumo position. And that's not to say that you can't do that from a sumo position. It's just the reason you're in it is you're going to sit back into your hips, push through your quads, and kind of brace everything and stand straight up. So that's kind of where I go on that. So we've got sumo, we've got conventional, that's usually a higher hip motion, and then we have trap bar, and then there's dumbbell and all sorts of stuff. Trap bar is is also called a hex bar, and again, it's got high handles and it's got low handles. Pardon me, hold on. Good Lord, big yawn there. Have another sip of coffee. Holy shit. 6 in the morning, is what it is. So, hex bar is great. I think it's you can find them pretty cheap, and it should be it's a good tool and to have in the toolkit. You can do a lot with them, but it's also a little bit more of a squatting motion. The handles are right next to your legs versus in front. So again, it's going to be a little bit, I'm going to say, safer on the back to load up more quickly, because usually when you're pulling with a trap bar and pulling sumo, if you go to pull and it doesn't go, nothing really happens. It just kind of, gravity seems to be turned up and it's stapled to the floor. Unless you do something stupid like really get out of position. Versus a conventional deadlift, it's very, very easy if you don't have a good lifter's wedge and like really good tension and technique, that it's very easy for your hips to come up first to be almost the height of your shoulders, and then you start pulling, and then you're basically skipping your posterior chain. You're kind of like pulling from your low back mostly, and that's when bad things can happen. So hex bar is great, but let's talk about the conventional deadlift a little bit, because it is good. It's important to have a good hip hinge. Now, this can work for all three, but if you're standing straight up, shins are on the barbell, you can have your hands next to your legs and like the seam on your pants or shorts or whatever. And all you're gonna do is you're gonna keep your legs kind of not hyper extended, locked out, but straight. And then you're gonna imagine like you're gonna like close a drawer in the kitchen behind you, and you're just gonna keep your legs straight, and you're gonna slowly push your butt back, keeping your spine angle the same, and you're gonna push your butt back and your hands are gonna slide down your legs until they're at your knee. When they're at your knee, you're then going to maintain that same spine angle, and you're going to squat down to meet the bar, right? So we go hips, then knees to lower, and then you're going to try and imagine like as your hands are on the bar, double overhand, don't go mixed grip, talked about that in a second. Double overhand, you're then gonna squeeze in like the back part of your armpit. You're going to squeeze hard like in the lats, like you're trying to break a walnut. And then as from there, then you just push through the floor. You don't push through your heels, you don't push through your toes, you push through your entire fucking foot, and you stand up and you get past the knee, right? Everything squats up past the knee, and then you push your hips forward and squeeze your quads and your glutes to stand up. We don't hyperextend and move backwards, loading the lumbar spine in extension too much. From there, this is where a lot of people shit the bed, myself included. So from there, that first move again should be ass back, torso, legs stay relatively straight, torso stays, like spine angle stays nice and the same, not changing, until that bar gets to the knee, and then you squat back to the ground. What happens is, and this is what I did and why my back went for a poop there when I was when I heard it, is when you get to the top, and if your first move is your knees and you kind of let your knees, you squat a little, then no matter what, that next even if it looks like a good hip hinge, what's happening is you're actually putting a little bit of like excess flexion in the lumbar spine. You're kind of loading it improperly. So you need to hinge back, keep that tension in your posterior chain, right from your heels all the way up to your glutes and obviously into your back. And then we kind of use the knees to bend once we get past the knee. Super, super, super important. And it's hard for people to kind of get that pattern ingrained if you've been kind of, especially if you stand up and lock your deadlift out with hips extended, like a butt squeezed, hips extended all the way forward, but your knees are still kind of bent. So if you're someone who has trouble with deadlifts and you're like, they hurt my back, again, quit blaming the deadlift, have a little look in the mirror. And what you should do is take a few videos of your lifts and say like, oh man, I do stand up and I do have bent knees at the top. And then you should just work through this pattern. And I'm telling you, like, just take a grain of salt. You know, I would be doing this all the time. Like, have your hands just like, you know, you're like waiting for the freaking kettle to boil and just, okay, knees stay straight, slide my hands down to my knees, then squat to the ground, back up, and just like ingrain that pattern and just kind of rip out some reps all throughout the day. And that's going to work more than like, oh, well, I deadlift like once or twice a week or something like that. And I'm just gonna, I'll do that on my next day of like 85% or 8 out of 10 for 5x5 or something like that. Like, it's just not, it's not super bright to just kind of try some technique changes, especially on a lift like that. But the same thing's kind of the same for the sumo deadlift and the trap bar deadlift. So it's whatever, your legs are just in a different spot on the sumo deadlift, and then your grips are just in a different spot on the trap bar deadlift. So those are some of the things I think that are extremely important. Now here's one of the things I will say, and I'll pick on Adam a little bit after another sip of coffee. He's been pulling trap bar deadlifts for a while now, but he only pulls high handles, and I shouldn't pick on that. I should pick on his trainer, really. He only pulls from the high handles. Now, if you can pull whatever, 400 pounds or 300 pounds or 500, whatever, on the trap bar, like, you should for sure be like be doing 100-pound dumbbell RDLs. And if you're not, then you need to maybe spend a little bit more time in some varied lifts. So super, super, super important to get a little bit of variation in there, but you don't necessarily need to load it up as heavy as your main lift. Like, I sumo pull every week, somewhere around between 430 and 500, and it's, well, like more like 485. But I'm not like, okay, well, I did that, and now I want to load up the trap bar deadlift at 500 pounds, and now I want to load up my conventional bar at 400 pounds. Like, I don't just keep loading. Like, I use stuff that's really hard. Like, I'll do Romanian deadlifts with the 100-pound dumbbells, or I'll do, which is, I mean, like literally less than half of what I'm lifting. So obviously my body can take it, but use the accessory work to help yourself out there. And then other ways of like of kind of like putting in a little bit of this and that into the mix are obviously banded deadlifts, where you're like standing on a band, or you've got some bands pinning down, and then you can work some speed aspect. Obviously there's no or minimal tension at the bottom, more tension at the top. Chains, all sorts of stuff. Deficit pulls from blocks. Maybe it's starting at your knee and you're creating tension halfway up in a lift. And at the knee is where a lot of people really shit the bed, so myself included. So there's a ton of stuff you can do, but especially as well, I would say, you don't need to have that like 400, 500 pound deadlift. You can be totally fine. Like, I always say, like, for guys, like, you know, pulling double body weight, being able to pull double body weight is a good feat, and it's also just it's a good benchmark for strength. The gals, you know, 1.5 times, but these days more closer to 2 times body weight with how strong women are getting these days, which is freaking awesome. And then you can keep it at that. Like there's no need to push further. And then you can, besides for ego really, and then you can still lift all the other lifts. You can still kind of like have, you know, banded deadlifts, RDLs, block pulls, deficit deadlifts, all sorts of good stuff to increase that posterior chain strength, and also to just put load on the body, like that neuromuscular adaptation that happens when you're picking something up consistently that's heavy is excellent for you. So that's kind of the deadlift tips and tricks there a little bit. Now, I would say, what the hell was I going to talk? Oh yeah, so mixed grip versus double overhand and stuff. I used to mix grip just to save my grip for when I was competing in CrossFit. You'd be like, you know, doing pull-ups and then onto deadlifts and you know, hang cleans, all these things, and your grip gets pretty smoked. So mixed grip, that's where one hand's over top, one's underneath. That's good. I don't pull like that really at all anymore. My hands are strong enough. I pull with a hook grip, which a lot of people say hurts your thumb, but you eventually just like get over it and it feels, you don't really feel it at all actually. So I would say the only thing I would say, especially for guys, especially if you are quote unquote kind of stiff and you do pull some heavy deads, there is a little bit of correlation with the hand that's underhand, that's like under the bar, and that bicep and that elbow straightens out. It can kind of like tear your bicep. I'm not saying that this is gospel, but it is one of those things. It's also get better grip strength. Like until you're pulling whatever 600 pounds, like you should be able to hold it. So and maybe then you should still too. And depending on the size of your hands and all that stuff. But I would say pull double overhand, no hook grip. That's where you're just there. Your thumb's not underneath your hand. You can look that stuff up until you can't. And then I would just and then go hook grip, but just try and make your hands stronger. Yeah. So there's that. Was there going to be one other thing? Deadlifts, hinging. Right. So one of the things that's nice about wearing a belt is as you I kind of tighten up from the top, get down into that thing, I sink for sumo deadlifting, I sink my hips down, and then I really feel myself expand into my weightlifting belt. And that's a great cue that you're starting your lift with good tension. Oh man, Mike, you're gonna have to cut these yawns out. That's at like 1824, 1820 to 1830 here. Fuck. Or don't cut them out. I don't care. They'll be on the video though. So creating tension at the bottom, you know, like I see a lot of people try and create it at the top. And then they fuck around at the barbell forever, and then you see them lose it and then try and get it again, and it's usually not as good. So really try and, I mean, there's top down, there's people who start at the top, grab that bar and go, and then there's other people like me who start at the bottom and then go up. So the belt's really nice for that, just to have yourself, you know, make sure you're starting with the most intra-abdominal pressure IAP possible to pull safely and pull strong. And that's kind of, you know, that's probably about it. I mean, you know, if you got any questions, fire them over to me. We're going to talk about probably ratios of pushing to pulling next week, and just some little tips and tricks and stuff, hopefully. And then, yeah, then we'll probably be out of the lifts. And yeah, I mean, guys, you know, I'm always looking for content, and I got a lot of shit up here, but that's and ideas. But if anybody's got anything, always reach out. Cheers, guys. Happy hunting.